We ended our Christmas Eve service this last year by reading from the Gospel of John chapter 1. And over the past, 5 months, we've been making our way through John's Gospel. And this week and next week, we come to John's final chapter, John 21. And so we hear the first part of this last story this morning in John 21, verses 1 through 14. After these things, Jesus showed himself again to the disciples by the Sea of Tiberias. And he showed himself in this way. Gathered there together were Simon Peter, Thomas called the twin, Nathanael of Cana in Galilee, the sons of Zebedee, and 2 others of his disciples. Simon Peter said to them, "I'm going fishing." And they said, "Well, we'll go with you." So they went and they got in the boat. But that night they caught nothing. Just after daybreak, Jesus stood on the beach, but the disciples did not know that it was Jesus. Jesus said to them, "Children, have you no fish? Have you?" They answered him, "No." And he said to them, "Well, cast your net on the right side of the boat, and you will find some." So they cast it. And now they were not able to haul it in because there were so many fish. That disciple whom Jesus loved said to Peter, "It's the Lord." And when Simon Peter heard that it was the Lord, he put on his outer garment, for he'd taken it off, and he jumped into the sea. But the other disciples came in the boat, dragging the net full of fish, for they were far from land. They are not far from land, only about 100 yards off. And when they had gone ashore, they saw a charcoal fire there with fish on it and some bread. And Jesus said to them, "Bring some of the fish that you have just caught." So Simon Peter went aboard and hauled the net ashore full of large fish, 153 of them. And though there were so many, the net was not torn. Jesus said to them, "Come and have breakfast." Now, none of the disciples dared to ask him, "Who are you?" because they knew it was the Lord. And Jesus came and took the bread and gave it to them and did the same with the fish. And this was now the 3rd time that Jesus appeared to the disciples after he was raised from the dead. This is the word of God for the people of God. Thanks be to God. Lord, may the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable and pleasing to you, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. If you ever eat with children or grandchildren, then you may have an experience with a young person who strongly prefers some real simple, familiar comfort foods, right? Maybe it is something like buttered noodles, or a grilled cheese sandwich, a hot dog, or mac and cheese, right? These plain, familiar meals, they're easy to be the same every time, right? You get your Kraft box, and it's always going to taste the same, and they like that it's predictable, and they enjoy it. And then you go out to eat, and of course, they want to have a grilled cheese sandwich, or the same old hot dog, or they want a little bowl of mac and cheese, and you want them to get what they want, right? You're going out to eat, it's kind of a treat. Everybody should enjoy their food. Oh, but then you look at the kids' menu and you realize that a grilled cheese costs $7.50. And you start thinking, how many grilled cheese sandwiches could I make for that? 10? No, 20? You can make a lot at home, and So parents, grandparents in a situation like that might be a little frustrated to order their child or their grandchild a $5 bowl of Kraft mac and cheese. But that's what they want. That's familiar to them. And you might be thinking, well, when I go out to eat, I'm going out, I want it to feel like a treat. I want something a little bit different. I want it to feel special, something that I don't normally make at home, right? A recipe that I don't know, or uses ingredients that we don't keep in the kitchen all the time. It helps you justify the cost of it, to feel like you're getting the full experience of dining out. But kids who strongly prefer these comfort foods, they're not usually looking for a gourmet grilled cheese with Gouda and Brie and Jarlsberg in it, or a deconstructed mac and cheese served over a charcoal plate, or anything like that. They want something familiar, something they're used to, and maybe you find yourself trying to encourage them. Hey, let's try something new. Why don't we try this? Why don't we try some new food here? And it's not because there's anything wrong with the comfort foods. I mean, who doesn't like a good bowl of mac and cheese? But you know that there are many wonderful, nutritious, and delicious foods if they will learn to give them a try. They're missing out on some really exciting dishes just because they prefer to stick with what's familiar. That's not a problem just for kids, is it? I mean, all of us, we prefer what's familiar. We like our familiar foods and our familiar routines, our familiar traditions, our familiar stories. Has anybody over the last few years watched a show or a movie that was a remake, a redo of some old show you used to watch, and you just thought, I kind of like the original a lot better. I kind of liked it the old way, right? All they did was make it new and worse. And that's the truth sometimes. We just kind of want the familiar story. There's something deeply human about that. We're drawn to what is familiar because it feels safe, feels comforting. It reminds us of what's worked before, and so there's nothing inherently wrong with wanting that familiarity. But sometimes our attachment to what's familiar, it can keep us from recognizing when God is inviting us to something new. It brings us to this story from John this morning. I mean, most of you are probably familiar with this story of the disciples fishing all night and catching nothing. Some of y'all are familiar with that in your own lives. You've spent a whole lot of time and come back with nothing. But we know this story of the disciples, right? This is a familiar one. They're out all night, they fish and get nothing. And then they hear somebody on the shore shout out to them, hey, you need to fish on the other side of the boat, right? Which I'm sure they took as well as all of us would take a statement like that after a hard, frustrating night, and someone comes along and says, well, I'll tell you how to do it. But they do. They fish from the other side. They try it this new way, and all of a sudden, the fish are abundant, and it's filling up their nets. And they get to the shore with all these fish, and in the story we know best of all, Jesus calls these fishermen to become his disciples. And he says to the fishermen, follow me and I will make you. Yeah, it's familiar, right? We know that's how that story goes. Except it doesn't go that way in John, does it? It's a little bit different. The story we read in John's gospel, it's not told in that familiar way. This is not Jesus calling for new disciples to follow him. This is Jesus giving some final instructions to the disciples who carry on once he ascends. And in John's version, Jesus doesn't say that he will make them fishers of men at all this time. That line's gone, and to me that feels strange. I really like that line. I think that's a really good way to say this. And John leaves it out. And I kind of prefer the other way. But John's telling this familiar story in a new way because Jesus is making a new point. Jesus tells his disciples it's time to try something new. Their life of following Jesus around and listening to his sermons and watching him do the miracles, that time has ended, and it's time for them to become the leaders and the workers. He's going to commission Peter and the others to do some amazing things, but it's going to require them to step out of their comfort zones. And so from the shoreline, Jesus calls to them and tells them to fish in a totally different way. They must turn all of their nets, all of their equipment, all of themselves to the other side of the boat. And it's not because the fish are on that side. They could have just turned the whole boat and done it one more time. No, Jesus wants them to move themselves, to change from one side to the other. And when they listen to him and they switch up how they're doing things, they find their nets are full. So Jesus has them bring this full net of fish over to the beach. They bring it to the fire that he's already started, and they let their catch of fish join with his catch of fish so that they can have a meal together. When they listen to Jesus and do this new thing, they are blessed with its results. And then they get to participate in what Jesus had already been doing. And that's a lesson that's going to be really important for them if they're going to change in their roles from disciples to apostles. If they're going to step out of their comfort zones and follow Jesus and Jesus' Spirit in sharing the gospel with the world, they need to know that they're going to have to try new things and that these new things can lead to new blessings, that God will be with them in these attempts, and that they'll be connected to what Jesus is doing and has been doing all along. This call to move in new directions and move in new ways, it can be daunting. We can get so attached to the way that we've always done things that we want to resist any sort of change. But we heard from the reading in Isaiah that when God is creating something new, if we hold on too tightly to that which is familiar, even that which God has done in our life in the past, then we will struggle to perceive what God is doing right here and now. We might miss that there's a whole new way being laid out before us and all of the blessings that we'll encounter along that way. I spent a lot of time this week focused on backpacks. And I see several of you around here who were with me in that focus as we packed them up and got them ready to ship out. It's something we've been doing at this church for quite a while. Since we got here 7 years ago, this has been one of our practices. And even before I was around, y'all have been doing these hands-on mission kits. And each spring, we get a list of supplies that are to go in each kit. And in the past, we would do this individually. We'd get our list, and then we'd go to Target or Walmart or Dollar Tree, and we'd start checking things off the list and seeing what deals we could find. And those of us who could, we'd pack a backpack here, or maybe we'd try to pack 2 some years if the things were affordable. But it was kind of hard to get good deals since it's the middle of May or April, and those deals don't come till August usually. I remember about 5 years ago we did this. We had 25 backpacks one year, and we said, we need to set a goal of 40 this next year. I think we can do more. So the outreach set that goal for 40 backpacks. And we put it out there, and the church responded and met that goal, and we were real excited. And then the next year, we tried something new. Outreach team said, well, what if we pooled all of our resources together so that we could buy items in bulk and get them cheaper and get more of them? Would we be able to get more backpacks and help more students? And so we set that as our plan one year to buy in bulk. And instead of sending everybody out shopping, we pooled our money here at the church and we could order together. And we made that change 3 years ago. And every year since, we have sent over 140 backpacks to Liberia. We had to let go, though, of that feeling we got when we went shopping, right? Do you remember? It felt good to you get to pick out all these things and know that somewhere on the other side of the ocean, some kid's going to open up a backpack to see what you picked out for them. I remember it making me feel good. But by giving up that feeling, it doesn't feel as good to just write a check. But it feels pretty good for all these kids who get backpacks that weren't getting them before. And it's making a difference in hundreds and hundreds of more lives because we tried it this new way. What a haul of blessings we are able to pull in for these students of Liberia. Sometimes being a faithful follower of Jesus means casting our nets in a new direction. We could look further back to 15 years ago when this church decided to cast their nets for children and youth who didn't have a way to come to church. And we started sending out vans to go find kids and to bring their friends and let them come here and experience the love of Jesus in our community and to get some nice meals a few times a week. And it didn't take very long of sending those vans out before they were as full as the disciples' nets, did it? I could talk about so many different times when you have heard this call to do something new and stepped out in a new direction that felt strange and different, and yet we've seen the blessings that come. I could talk about when we added the cameras and the live stream during COVID. And it was new and it was different and we weren't sure if we should do that, but so many folks that have been stuck at home, folks who physically can't be here, have been able to see our beautiful choir and hear them sing. And to look at our beautiful church on a Sunday morning and feel like they are here worshiping with us. And it's a blessing. And we're so glad that they're able to do that. When we keep our ears and our hearts open to hear what Jesus is calling us to do, it can lead us to some unexpected places. It can lead us to some unexpected challenges. But it also leads us to unexpected blessings. And that's what being a faithful church is all about. And the same holds true for us as individuals. You know, maybe you've never worked with children and youth, and yet you keep hearing this call to help out at camp in the community. Or you keep hearing your friend invite you to Bible study on Tuesday, telling you what a difference it makes. Or some of you have a constant tea time on Saturday mornings, and yet you hear about how this church serves its neighbors with the food pantry on that fourth Saturday each month. Or you look down your street and your neighborhood and you don't recognize many of your neighbors anymore because people been moving in and out. And there's that little voice saying, maybe I should invite them over sometime. These little callings to try something new. We all like what's familiar. We all like what's comfortable, and change is always a little bit scary. But if we take an honest look at this world, we know it's in desperate need of some changing. And God is on a mission to redeem this world, to restore it, and all of us with it. There is a heavenly banquet being set up, but we might have to cast our nets in a new direction if we want to be a part of it. When we allow God to move us in a new direction, to help us do a new thing, then new blessings can arise. Beautiful and wonderful things are created, even when it seems like we're stuck in a boat where the fish ain't biting. I mean, we know that feeling when the finances aren't great, when the attendance drops, when your work gets frustrating, when family just feels stressful, when health starts to slip away. We wind up in these places and we're tempted to think we're just going to stick with what we've been doing because that's what we know. And this is all we're going to get. We've tried it before and it didn't work. Oh, but God has so much in store for us. There are blessings to be had and a new future right around the corner. So that's why today, as we come to this communion table, we do so as a people still learning to cast their nets in new directions and follow where Jesus is calling us. Just as those disciples brought what they had caught to the shore and discovered that Jesus had already been preparing a fire and a meal for them, we too this morning can bring what we have. Bring what we have gathered in faith, our gifts, our service, our hopes, our labors, and we'll discover that Christ is already at work before we even showed up at the table. The risen Jesus is not only calling us into new directions, he is preparing this feast for us. He takes what we have gathered through faithful obedience. He joins it with his own provision and invites us to come to this feast, to come to his table, to come and have breakfast. Today, Christ is still offering that call. Come and be fed. Come and be renewed. Come and be reminded that your labor in the Lord is not in vain. At this table, we don't simply remember Jesus. We meet with the risen Christ, the one who nourishes his people and strengthens us for discipleship. And then he sends us back into the world, renewed by that Spirit to cast our nets somewhere new. So come, bring your faithfulness and bring your uncertainty and bring your hunger and bring your joy and bring your pain and join the feast that Christ is preparing. For this is a table where a familiar grace meets us and new mercies await us. At this table, the risen Lord continues to make new and beautiful things in us. Thanks be to God. Amen.